फॉरेन में वो गाना वगैरह हाँ यही है ये तो एकदम वही करेक्ट है मीटिंग ना आहे आता एक सध्या इथे ठेवू
You start with the location on the palms of your chest and into the state of mind, emotional state, and the touch. Not a ritual of recitation. That in Buddhist work, allow the intelligence of the head to descend, the intelligence of the heart to ascend.
Patanjali Shastra Jadasam Kleta
Gurur Brahma. Guru Guru Hari Om. Drop the palms down. Raise the head up. So now I invite Srineet. So I now invite Srini to come. He has specially written shlokas in the memory of Guruji, so he will recite and explain the same to us.
Okay, hope you can hear me. All right. So this is about the shlokas on Guruji. Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you some background about it, and then you can sort of repeat after me. So this was composed shortly after Guruji passed away. Okay. And since then, I think a year and a half ago, or maybe a couple of years ago, I changed it a little bit to have it fit in the rules of the Sanskrit metrical system. So I'll sort of change the newer version. I'll be saying we have been reciting it with the Yoga Sutra sessions anyway. So I'll be saying that also. But before we do that, I also want to say that what is a shloka and how do we, what is the point of reciting it? What should be in our minds as we recite it? So the Indian tradition gives a very high value, very high weightage for praise of the Lord or praise of the Guru. And in a text as exalted as the Vishnu Sahasranamam, it is said that the greatest dharma is to praise. So, Eshame sarva dharmanam dharmodikatamo vataha yad bhaktya pundari kaksham stavair archen narasada. So, to the Lord with bhakti, so with love, we have to chant the praise and and that praise goes to the Lord, it is said. So, one of the names of the Lord is Stutit Priyaha, and the same is applicable to the Guru. And the word namaha, which is namas, that comes as part of all these shlokas and the praise where we say we bow down. So namanam means pravvi bhavaha, which means to bow down. So when we bow down, what is said to happen is firstly we keep our ego aside. Okay, and then we are filled with reverence about the one that we are bowing down to. After we are filled with that reverence, the memory of that person, Guru, Lord, etc., fills our chitta, fills our mind. So there is a purification of the chitta, purification of the mind that happens. That is known as smriti parishuddhi. And after that purification, then we are fit and we are ready to receive grace. Because when we invoke somebody with love and reverence, the grace falls upon us. Therefore, there is a text where it very beautifully said that the word namas or namaha is not only about namanam. It is not just we bowing down. It is also namayati. It makes the celestial being or the Guru look down and take notice from their exalted position. So it is not about us bowing down. It is also about making them look down and take notice of us and shower us with grace. So when we recite these shlokas, we have to have that background of what is the meaning that tradition has ascribed to it, and we carry that meaning as we recite those shlokas. Okay, so with that background, I'll sort of say the shlokas once and also explain the meaning. So the first two lines, it is different from what is here because it's been sort of I've made those changes. So the first two lines is Vaijnanikam Pravaktritva Asaneshu Kalavidam Yoga Abhyase Tatvajnam Vandeham Sundaram Gurum. Now I'll tell you the meaning. So Vaijnanikam Pravaktritve. Vaijnanikam, I mean, to the one who was a scientist in his teaching. Okay. So also let us try to understand that, because Guruji also used to say, I'm a scientist when I teach. So the method of science, actually the term Vijnana also has a sort of a very deep meaning, but we won't go there right now. But the scientific method is about reasoning, right? It is about cause and effect. It is about careful experimentation, right? Not random trial and error, but there is a hypothesis, there is an experimentation, and we develop the knowledge as part of that. So Guruji's role as a scientist in his teaching has two aspects to it. So one of the aspects is, in his teaching, he was thinking like a scientist. Because who am I teaching to? Okay. What should I do that will generate an appeal for the subject in their mind? Why are they not able to do these asanas? Where is the stiffness? Where for each individual? So that is why the V in Vijnana is about the specifics, the Vishishtam. It's not a general thing. Okay, so where is the stiffness? What is the medical condition? How can I help them? Let me try to use this as a prop. Right? So his thinking was the thinking of a methodical scientist when he was teaching. So that is one aspect of Guruji as a Vaijnanikaha when teaching, Vaijnanika Pravastutve. The other part of it is also how he expounded the subject. He did not expound the subject so much as a religious system, but more as a system that is methodical, systematic, based on reasoning. That he did it by choice, given the modern world, the minds of the audience, and so on. So his teachings are confused with, you do this asana, therefore this part, there is an extension, there is an opening, that is good for you for this aspect, this is good for the mind, you have to synthesize, here you have to analyze, like Rajvi said, intelligence of the head, intelligence of the heart. See, he was sort of analyzing and analytically breaking down into simplified parts and then synthesizing things, which is very much the method of science in which he sort of delineated the subject for us. So that is the part about Vaijnanikam Pravaktritve. So as we are reciting, we should have this sort of should come into our mind that will lend meaning to the words that are being recited. Then the other is Asaneshu Kalavidam. So Kalavid means one who knows the art, so sort of an artist. So in his asana, he was an artist. So so when we say art, while science was a lot about reason and reasoning with some parts of intuition, art transcends reason. Right? Art transcends reasoning. So here the aspect of the heart comes forth. And his asana was an expression of that aspect from the heart. And in our Shastras, it is said that the heart is the place for divinity. Whether Bhagavad Gita, Chandogya Upanishad, everywhere it is said. So the expression of the heart comes forth in the asana. That's why he used to say things like exhalation takes you to the one who is residing within. Inhalation helps you know yourself. So all these things are coming from his own asanas and how he was doing. So that was an expression of the message coming from the heart. So that is asaneshu kalavidam. And there you see body is my temple, asanas are my prayers, everything comes in there. So scientist in his teaching, artist in his asanas, yoga abhyase cha tattvajnam. So in his study of yoga, he was a tattvajna. The tattva are sort of the fundamental principles, the fundamental entities. Having deep knowledge of the tattva, and in particular, if you look at the yoga as a subject, knowledge is supposed to be direct perception, direct realization, known as sakshatkara. So tattvajna means having complete 360-degree understanding of the principles and entities that cover both time and space, okay, for those fundamental entities. So in his own study of yoga, in his yoga abhyasa, he was a tattvajna. To such a person, Vandeham Sundaram Gurum. To such a person who is a guru, Sundara refers to beauty, but also it was his name, Sundar Raja. So I bow to him, to one who is a scientist in his teaching, artist in his asanas, and the knower of the ultimate truth in his study of yoga. I bow to him. So that is the first couplet. So now the first couplet talks about Guruji himself, right? And the praise and reverence for Guruji. The second couplet is about his deeds. So it says, Yoga Vriksho hi lokesmin, yat preranena vardhitaha, Yogacharya Guru Tubhyam Sundaraya Namo Namaha. So Yoga Vriksha. So this is about his deed, what he did in this world. So Yoga Vriksha is the tree of yoga. Loke Asmin, in this world. Yat Preranena, through the inspiration and impetus of whom it grew and was nourished, the tree of yoga. To such a Yogacharya. Now, Yogacharya is also a word we use very often, but we also need to know what is this Acharya, because again, traditionally, there are many words for a teacher. Adhyapaka, Upadhyaya, Acharya, Guru. So all of these have different meanings. So the Acharya is a specific word. It's good to understand. So there are multiple definitions. So one very nice one says, Achinoti Shastrarthan. The one who collects, accumulates, and picks the meaning of the divinely ordained knowledge. Shastrartha. Achinoti Shastrarthan. Achara Sthapanadapi. Achara means conduct, the right conduct, the practices, the norms. So Sthapanam means establishing. So firstly, picking and collecting the knowledge from the Shastra and establishing the conduct and practices. Achara Sthapanadapi. Then Swayam Acharate Yastu, who himself also follows whatever conduct is being established, and not only sort of walks the talk, as we say. Right? Swayam Acharate Yastu, Tasmad Acharya Uchate. So Guruji is very much an embodiment of all these aspects. Shastrartha, establishing norms of conduct, following it himself in a very exalted manner to serving as an example. And then we say, Yogacharya Guru, the Guru, Tubhyam, to you, Sundaraya Namo Namaha. Again, Sundara for Guruji's name, Sundaraja, Namo Namaha. It is the same bowing down, like I explained in the beginning. Okay, so now I'll say that, you repeat after me. I think the second word is the one where people stumble, Pravaktrutva. So that is one where you have to pay attention, otherwise it's pretty easy. So I'll say 2 words at a time and you can repeat. Vaijnanikam Pravaktritva Asaneshu Kalavidam Yogabhyase Tatvagnyam Vandeham Sundaram Gurum Yoga Vriksho hi lokesmin Yat Preranena Vardhitaha Yogacharya Guru Tubhyam Sundaraya Namo Namaha.
So thank you, Srini, for so precisely composing the attributes of Guruji in just 2 couplets. Today's theme is Guruji's sadhana, Guruji's practice, a very crude term. Sorry. Very crude term for sadhana. Many of us have seen Guruji practice in this very hall for hours together, earlier in this corner and later in that corner. Sometimes the class would be on and we wouldn't even be aware that he was there. And maybe we would have just crossed, and some senior students would keep barriers there so that he would not walk across. But silently he would practice there. Later, when Abhijata started training, and when I'm saying later, it is at least 2 decades, that he would start during his practice. Srini just told us about what Guruji talked about his own practice. When I teach, I'm a scientist. The precision, the clarity, the cause, effect, and the questioning, the analytical mind, all that science demands. When I demonstrate, I'm an artist, and it is through this art, through his demonstrations, that he inspired people across the world. He himself has said he has given thousands of demonstrations at a time when yoga was considered not a subject for a common man. It definitely was not what it is today. It was something which people did as reclusive. Why would a common householder or anybody who's living in this world practice yoga? I mean, it's something which was left to when you are older, but it is through his demonstrations that he inspired people across the world. And some of these demonstrations were to pack halls in some of the biggest theaters in the world. And that was the power of a single artist without any background, without any music, nothing, and just with his body, which he said is the only instrument that we were born with, that he got people. And then he said, when I practice, I'm a philosopher. What is that practice? How many of us have actually seen his practice? And when I say see, we just see with our eyes. And often when he would practice, maybe people would look at him and maybe try to imitate, quote unquote, or imitate a few days later. But none moved anywhere remotely close to him because firstly, we were trying to practice what we saw, but we did not know what was happening inside. Words cannot express what the eyes can see. And so we have a film on Guruji's practice, a film which many of you would have seen some point of time, but Guruji's practice continues to inspire. So I will not come in between the film of Guruji's practice and our list. Over to you, Kunal. Yeah. So since the screen is there, we will have you to move on one side so all of you can see it. So while the lights are still on, please move so you can see the screen. The device there.
Kunal, screen sharing होत नहीं है for some reason. Sì.
I'm sure our hearts are in our mouth. And this was not a demonstration in front of a camera, it was its practice. Starting from Bakasan, Pashwa Bakasan, Kukudasan, Pashwa Kukudasan, Galavasan, Ekpad Galavasan. And mind you, all this was done one after the other. For the youngsters in the crowd, there was no image editing, there was no video editing. It was taken non-stop. Just the thought, and just for for the records, Guruji was nearly 57 to 58 years old then, which is most people think it's time for retirement. And the intermediary asanas were Uttanasana and Urdhva Dhanurasana. He actually brought to life the sutra Prayatna Saithilya Ananta Samapatti Dhyam. Rupa Lavanya Balavajra. All this form, the grace was there in the practice, what we saw, and not a glimpse of aggression. You see the muscles, we couldn't identify a single muscle. It wasn't his body, it was his consciousness that was performing. And I don't think any of us here are in a position to decipher how he did this. And then, therefore, we have none other than Prashantji, who will tell us what and decipher Guruji's practice. As Prashantji often says, we all are practicing anger yoga, but we do not know what is anger's yoga. So, sir, please let us know.
Namaskar, all of you. You just saw the edifice and superstructure. Now I'd like to take you to the foundation, which will be unsightly. At the outset, you need a clarification because we have an idea and concept of practice. But you should know that in formative times for Guruji, there was no Iyengar yoga. And then it got formalized, and we don't have problem to really practice if we have will and if we have wish. Because the instructions have been very formal for all of us, what to do, how to do, etc., etc. So the technocentric aspects were evolved for us to really embark upon practice if we decide to practice. That was not the case for Guruji. Because otherwise you will never imagine, with the background that you have about practice, what is the matter of practice, what is the process of practice, what is the practice, because we are taught how to do what. And based on that, if we want to practice, we can decide upon and we can embark upon practice because we are given technical process of it. But Guruji, in his formative times, really did not have any technical process of doing any asana. If you go to the formative period of Guruji in 1937-38, when he met his Guruji, and we all think that just as we are taught by a teacher, he was taught by his teacher. And therefore, you will not be able to imagine the scenario with what we have for us. Krishnamacharya took him to Mysore, where he was then teaching in Yogashala. And that was an institution created under the patronage of the royal family of Mysore. And this Yogashala was primarily meant for children and teenagers. Since you do not have the understanding of how Sri Krishnamacharya's yoga was then for children, we will be not able to imagine what it was. At the outset, let me tell you a very stark characteristic aspect. We all know that there is an asana. We do an asana, stay there for a while, and come out of the asana. But Sri Krishnamacharya had devised a process to propagate yoga in children and teenagers, which was called of Nyasa system, Vinyasa system, where what idea Guruji had in the beginning is not do an asana, but go on moving from one asana to another asana. So it was a flow, and that was called as Vinyasa by his Guru, and he taught children that way. So Guruji had no idea that Shirshasana is a pose where we have to stay. Go to Shirshasana and try to do all variations of Shirshasana and try to go to whatever you can go from Shirshasana. So in formative times, we did not have idea that Shirshasana is a static pose. As a matter of fact, none of the postures for him were static positions. They were all launch points of flow in a design. So in 1938, Guruji never knew that Shirshasana is to be done and stay there for a minute or 2 or 5 or 10 or 20, go to Shirshasana and flow into all variations. From Shirshasana, go to Viparidandasana, do all the variations of Viparidandasana, back arches, and then come back to Shirshasana, go to Sarvangasana. Similarly, variations and whatever can be done from Sarvangasana, he would be going for, which were not variations of Sarvangasana, but which were launched with Sarvangasana. So all this idea will, none of us will be having. So in 1938, Guruji had no idea that asana is a position. He thought any asana is a fount hole of several positions of the body. And in Guruji's time, Guruji himself was engaged in propagating yoga. So he trained all his Yogashala members to become display worthy, perform, and then go with him when he went for lecture demonstration series. He would make these children perform the way he had designed, choreographed any presentation. So you may not believe that Guruji's primitive idea of asana, that asana should be choreographed. That there must be a wonderful pattern emanating out of various asanas. So Tadasana was a launch point. From Tadasana, which all positions can be struck. Shirshasana was another position from where different asanas can be, like a garland, perform them. So it was a flow for him. Yoga was a flow for him. And in 1938, when Guruji came to Dharwad, after which he came to Pune and settled in Pune. So in 1938, it was again a demonstration that it was performed. And his demonstrations were always wonderfully choreographed by the Krishnamacharya as to how to flow in a smooth way and how to show many postures in 5 minutes. So Guruji's practice in 1938, 39, 40 was that yoga is only for performance, presentation, as an artistic piece with an artistic tone, and therefore his practice was mainly to be flowing from one asana to other asana and try to prepare a garland of several asanas. So that's how he started practicing when he was about 20 years of age in 1938. And that was his idea and notion of yoga, that this is a subject for performance, to appeal the people, spectators, like all of you now had the spectacle of this, what is called as 1975 practice. Precisely, it was 1975 performance only. He never practiced because by 75 he was in 1975 he was very matured. He had clear idea of what yoga was, why yoga was there, why yoga is there. But in 1938, he thought it is for performance, perform the skill of body, which has wonderful flow, smooth flow, catching the spectacles of the people and awe-inspire the people. And that is why he practiced in early 40s, even early up to early 40s. He was just trying to practice asanas for display. Because he also had the channel to propagate yoga only by presentation. He was not going and giving like talks and lectures on yoga, explaining people how yoga is good, etc., why everyone should take yoga, etc. He just tried to impress them by his performance. But initially he was not at all talking. He would just get onto the platform and present this marvel, and people would get astonished, awe-inspired, wonderstruck about his control over the body, the skill over the body, and the wonderful presentation to have a flow of demonstration, not perform in a demonstration. Because he did not have any idea, because his teacher, Krishnamacharya, had hardly taught him anything formally. And you are not used to this. Your teaching starts quite formally when you start your first lesson. So you are told, stand in Tadasana, like this, like this, like this. Do this, do that, do this way, do that way. So there was no formal process which he had learned from his teacher, because his teacher only showed him how to perform as the things are choreographed. And for quite few years, Guruji had idea of practice of yoga means to take one asana and from one asana try to make it a stem and try to create a design out of that. So from Tadasana, how many asanas can be evolved in a flow without any interruption, without any break? How I can flow from Tadasana to various asanas? So either it was flowing or, as you call as jumping, going from position to position, which is a spectacle. These are not jumping like children jump without any scheme. They merely jump when they are delighted. But it was schematized, designed, called jumpings, which we are aware of, and then flowings, etc. So that was his practice in the formative period when he came to Pune in 1938. To just maintain the control over the body and then perform the feat. It did not dawn upon him in 1930, 1938, 1940, 42 that Chief Shah is in a position where I have to stay 2, 3, 5, 10 minutes. He would be going position to position because his mission was to propagate yoga and only channel available was to give a demonstration. Eloquence he developed later. What to say about yoga, how to say about yoga, what to speak about yoga. As a child of 20, 22 years, he could not be doing it. Basically, he had moved from his native place. So he was a Kannada speaking boy, came to Maharashtra where Kannada was of no avail. He could not be talking in Kannada. So there's no point in talking to people. He had to take recourse to English. So he decided that I will not talk much about it because that won't be impressive because he did not have eloquence in 1940s to impress people with his talk. So he had to only show. And that's how we started practicing all those asanas, move from one asana to another asana in a flow, in an uninterrupted flow or in a designed form, go from one pose to another pose. That was the basis of Vinyasa school that his Guruji founded, and that's how we taught it. It is just flowing from one asana to another asana. But then Guruji realized, that yoga has a remedial efficacy. Because nobody wanted to come and learn from him and become a performer or become a street performer, go and perform asanas on streets. So nobody came to learn that. They were just like you all are fascinated to watch. None of you will be, or very few of you will be motivated to do something like that. You just want to watch and clap, applaud. Is that right? Are you going to make any attempt? We are not going to make any attempt. Hardly few, 0.0001%. Then how to propagate yoga? Then he had to really study the subject of yoga and try to arrive at remedial values of asanas. Because that was the one which could appeal the people and they would come for a remedy rather than learn the performance. Now, this film was shot in 1975. Ever since then, nobody has ever thought of performing like 1975 film. None of his students, none of us. We never thought we should also perform like that for a camera, for presentation. So then he started. There was no formal instructions, teachings coming from his teachers like you all are fortunate to have. All of us are fortunate to have a formal teaching from the teacher. We are told what to do and why it should be done, etc. At some stage, how it should not be done, or what is the use of it. So we will all try to ascertain what is the purpose of what we do. And what purpose have we identified? It is good for body, it is good for body health, it is good for body organ, it is good for your physical condition, it is good for your psychological condition, mental condition, and that is why we all have embraced the subject of yoga. Because it is for our worldly well-being, mundane well-being. That's why I recall, he wrote an article that by yoga, a sportsman will become excellent sportsman. You will excel in sports. Artist will excel in art. And he wrote that article in Bhavan's journal at that time. It went to the extent saying that a Christian will become good Christian. So whatever is our endeavor in life, he was trying to put across that yoga will help you in whatever you want to, whether you want to be in profession or whether you want to be in business, whether you want to be in a job or whether you are having any other trait that you are practicing. It is good for pursuit of art, pursuit of profession, or just your life as a householder. So he started churning on the thought, how I can prove to the world or convince the world that if you are a householder, this is good for you. If you are a professional person, this is good for you. How will I design the subject matter of yoga to be presented to young and old, strong and weak, with some pursuit in life? All of us have some pursuit in life, from business to job to occupation or whatever. So he had a thought process that way. Now I should figure out how yoga can be good for such mundane purposes, worldly purposes. So this was totally on his own. There was no one to guide him. So he made his own embodiment as a laboratory, as an academy. Let me try to understand how a set of yoga, set of asanas is good for someone who just want to be a householder, or who just wants to be in a business or profession or any kind of job, any kind of occupation. So his thought process commenced on how this is good for a carpenter, to an engineer, to a medical practitioner, to a job holder, to any artist, artisan, or anyone in the profession. How I can make yoga suitable for the mundane purpose of all of us. We all have mundane purpose in life as to what we should be: a teacher, a professor, a professional practitioner, medical practitioner, or law practitioner, or whatever kind of occupation. So he started practicing to explore how yoga can be suitable to people of different traits, people with different disposition, people with different predilections, people with different objectives in life. Because last 40, 50 years, this has been the experience for all of us. If the child is growing, the parents want to know what the child is going to do. The child has to say something about some job, some occupation. I want to become this, I want to become that. Some economic activity. I know any of the parents today will be dreaded. If the child says, I want to be Sri Krishna or Sri Rama, oh no. I want to be Prahlada, oh no. They will expose him to certain things, whereby you say, I will become an engineer, I will become medical practitioner, I will become some professional man, I will become some specialist here and there. This is how we are bringing up the children in our generation. That is why there is one wonderful saying in vernacular: we want Shivaji to be born, but not in our houses. Somebody else's houses. Let the Shivaji be born in somebody's house. Let Krishna be born in somebody else's house. Let Prahlad be born in somebody else's house, not in my house. My child should be worth some economic activity and should excel in name, fame, money, status, material status. Anyway, so Guruji started his practice. It was all explorative. None of us are used to explorative practices. It is only take a prescription and do it. Take an instruction and do it. Follow what the teacher says and go on doing it. This is what is our idea of practice. For Guruji, there was no one to tell him. He only understood his problem of life. His problem of life was that he did not have economic status, economic activity. He wanted a status in society. And the way was only to serve the society and make society avail of his services. How I can be useful to society. So he started devising yoga for school-going children, college-going children, those who are suffering with some ailments, physical ailments, physical maladies, psychomental maladies. So he started practicing exploratively how yoga can be devised so that it becomes useful for any person in the world who is countering limitations or problems. So I remember once he had told us, I did not like anyone coming to me and saying, I have no problems. Because then he could not have been helping or catering them. Whereas we want people around us who say, I have no problem, I have no problem, then you are happy. Somebody comes and go on sounding the problems, we are disturbed. He said, that was a time for me. Well, I wanted all the people around me to identify their problems and come to me with their problems and find a solution is available. I did not want anybody as no problem person. So that was his condition. You might think this is not a wishful thinking, but he said that was my condition in life. So his practice embarked upon a kind of research, explorative, experimental practices. Now, if you see whatever he just now saw, you will say, this man has no problem. But then he knew that if anybody comes, will come with a complaint, kidney problem, heart problem, liver problem, stomach problem, arthritis problem, or limb problem, or orthopedic problem, mental problem, psychomental problem, or so many other problems in life, such as somebody doesn't have offspring, married, but no children. So he identified the problems that are there in society. And then he started studying his own asanas, how the Shirshasana is good for kidneys, how the Shirshasana is good for, say, digestive system, how Shirshasana is good for respiratory system, how Shirshasana is good for spinal system. But before that, he was practicing all that. After 1945, etc., he was a problem. He was a person with no problem. All problems were before 1938. But by the time he came to Pune, he was a man with no physical problem. So you all have read in his life, he had tuberculosis and this and that and malaria of 1920s. It was fatal disease then. Today we don't bother about malaria, etc., typhoid, etc. There's so many remedies available. Medical science has advanced. You don't have any anxiety with such diseases, but that time it was a big anxiety and people were succumbing to such diseases. But all that was over for him. So his practice of yoga was to really understand the body system, how in any asana, how which system works how, which system works exaltedly, and what can be done for a faulty system in an asana. So he did not bother about what to do in Shirshasana for liver, if it is healthy, strong, normal. He bothered about liver subnormal, abnormal, having a problem, how Shivshasana can work on liver, how Shivshasana can work on kidneys. This was his process of learning, which was all based on his practice. Most of us learn and then practice. If you have not learned an asana, you will not try to venture it to do. So if you want to first learn and then practice. He practiced and then learned. Because we know that he was a self-taught person. So how did he learn? Not that somebody taught and then he did and practiced. Like it is our case. Somebody teaches us something, teaches Shivshasana, we start practicing Shivshasana, teaches us standing poses, we start practicing standing poses. So his basis for practice was altogether different because he wanted to be self-taught person, not a teacher-taught student, like which is the case of all of us. We are all teacher practitioners. Some of us have become so dogmatic. I was taught like this, I will only do like this. You think you were taught like this, you learned like this. So then we have some people in our community who are dogmatic about it. They think what they learned is what you taught. Now, if you make a little deeper inquiry, that cannot be the case. It is for him to testify whether you are practicing what was taught or you are practicing what you learned. That is why I don't remember any one of us getting compliment from him. Rather, he was critical about what we practice. You have not understood and you are doing it. You know, Guruji, you taught this way, you understood that way. Many of them have an idea of what anger yoga is, and they are very dogmatic about it. That is what you have, that is your perception. That is how you have understood him. That is how you have read him. So he was not practicing for the sake of practicing, he was practicing for the sake of exploring. Because there was nothing for him to follow. Like we have something to follow when you get to Shivshasana. There are so many things to follow, how to interlock, how the elbow should be, how the palm should be, how the head should be, where the head should be, how the shoulder should be, how the back should be, chest should be, legs should be, feet together, feet, etc. You know how they should be. He never had such kind of background. He went on exploring on his own how it should be for particular purpose. So he always imagined the problem somewhere in the brain or brawn, or somewhere in body or mind, and he tried to explore for such a problem what should be done. So all of us know he handled the problems of so many people, so many diseases, countless diseases, perhaps all the diseases which the world knows he had handled. He had none of those diseases. Yet he devised, if you have lung problem, what should be done? He did not have lung problem when he was practicing. All that was prior to his commencement of yoga. So his practice was explorative. His practice was never instruction-based, like is the case of all of us. You remember the technique of the teacher who has taught you, and then you go on following, emulating, interpreting, and following. So that's how he took the first step in yoga to propagate the yoga for the diseased people, suffering people with malady. And he had a very deep insight. It's not like medical science, which tells you about so many diseases. You can open out a dictionary of diseases and it will tell you A to Z diseases. Not only those diseases which with medical science deals, he tried to ponder over problems of human life. Many of us, we don't have a disease as a problem, but we have dis-ease in life, which is a major problem. Do you understand the word disease? The word disease, if you decipher, it is dis-ease. We are not easy with so many things. But that doesn't mean we have something ulcer to cancer. So we do not have anything ulcer to cancer, yet we have dis-ease. Why medical science doesn't consider about the dis-ease of a man. And there should be a pathological condition. But these days, our time medical practice, they don't want to ask your problem. They say, get your reports. They will send you to radiologist and pathologist and whatever diagnostic, and you get the report and they will read the report and they will say, this is your problem. They won't ask you to open the mouth. What is your problem? You get your reports. Why? Appointment is only 45 seconds with a consultant. So they are not bothered about this ease. Guruji bothered about this ease. Say in students in school. Students in school badly doing, they have a problem. Those students who are doing good, they don't have that problem in the school. That's why I recall when he was asked to teach in one of the schools in Pune, which was a Gujarati high school near Daruwala Bridge, if you know Pune. And the headmaster of the school requested Guruji to come and teach. You know what condition Guruji put? He said, give me the worst students of your class, the backbenchers. Give me nuts who are difficult to crack. He did not say, give me cream of students and I will teach them. Because the front bencher of a school has no problem. It is the backbencher in the school who has a problem. So he requested the teacher to select all those backbenchers, troubleshooters, bad students, non-performing students. He said, give them to me. Because they were all with problems. And therefore he could help them with problems. So he deliberately asked for the disposable students of the school. Don't dispose of, I will take care of them. Because he wanted to confront the problems. Now, the school-going children don't have disease as such. It is not that they have liver problem, stomach problem, colon problem, heart problem, lung problem. But why are they creating problems? So he considered that not just medical yoga, as today we are familiar with this concept of medical yoga. Any medical problem, yoga will come very handy, etc., etc. The dis-ease of mankind, dis-ease of a householder, dis-ease of a housewife. Now, she may not be having any pathological condition that she may not be going to a physician or to a doctor for her problems, but yet she has a problem being a housewife. So what are the problems of human beings was of major consideration for him, and he started practicing that in that way. How can I help a stone-headed child in a school to come to at least average level? A doltish school-going child to average level. And that's why his practice was explorative. So in schools, those children, backbenchers, don't have problems by themselves, but they are problem shooters. They don't have their own problem. They don't have any problem because not passing in school is not a problem for them. It is problem for their parents. But they are troubleshooters. Now, why are they troubleshooters? Why do they disturb other students? Why do they disturb the class? So he decided that it is the tamoguna in them, whereby they are having that nature. So he would pick them up and put them in a regimen and churn out rajoguna so much that the tamoguna will fade out. Like the sunrise, you don't see the moon in the sky. It might be there in the sky. In the dark spotlight, the moon is very much in the sky during the time, but why don't you see him? Because of the sun. So that's how he understood why problems are created by, or is of having a problem by oneself or a problem shooter in society. It is because of Sattva Raja Tamo Guna in imbalance. So what should I make? He had a student around early 1950s, mid 1950s. He was highly Rajasic person, making merry, enjoy. Enjoy was the key of his life. Go for all kinds of enjoyment. So he knew that he is very sensual person, very Rajasic person. He trained him in Shirshasana. This fellow in no time started staying in Shirshasana for 45 minutes. Now that Shirshasana would do the chemical changes in him. And that's how he overcame that problem that due to his tendencies, etc. So the tendency body was set right. I remember there was a demonstration in Pune in 1960s. And this person joined the whole band of students, all of us who were on the platform. In a corner, he went to Shirshasana and stayed in Shirshasana for the entire duration of the demonstration. He went to some 150, 200 asanas. He was in one asana. So for children, he would make jumpings and rigorous movements to totally shake the tamoguna and increase the rajoguna, so that with rajoguna they would be active. And when you are very, very active, sometimes you become tired and fatigued. You do nothing, but you just remain quiet. So he had discovered all these things. That was his propagation phase. Then, as he bloomed and blossomed, and you just saw word in the prayer, which Srinit chanted, he understood there are 3 channels in which I have to work. One, as a teacher. As a teacher, I must take recourse to logic, reasoning. I should be explain why something to be done and logic behind it, reasoning behind it. So as a teacher, he had to develop logical mind so that he could convince the people why what you are doing is good for you. Because people won't go by faith. Somebody says it's good for you, you won't be going on doing it. So he developed that reasoning behind his practices, analyzing the practices scientifically, and then try to understand the logic, reason, etc., the analytical thought process, perception, cognition, what actually happens, etc. So he was working like a scientist to become a teacher in the subject of yoga. And you know what height he reached as the supreme teacher of the world. He was the best teacher of all time. It is because of his study. But then he said, this is not good for me. Why you do Trikonasana and I do Trikonasana and all of you do Trikonasana is not the reason why he did. What for me? I don't need in a scientific process, or I don't need a logic or reasoning to be doing my Trikonasana and Shirshasana, etc. Then what should I be doing? So by 60s, when he decided to write the book on Light on Yoga, which started in 1958-59, he understood yoga is a philosophy. It is not a consumer product to be catered at the counters. This is your problem, take this, you will get okay. So he realized that it is not something which is a consumer product. That is for the world, it is consumer product. For me, it cannot be, it is not consumer product. I don't want to do it because it is good for me physically and mentally. I want to know something beyond. So he realized that there is a philosophy behind what the yoga subject is. At its foundation, there are philosophical tenets, philosophical principles. So for him, he wanted to practice it as a philosophy. When he taught to you and me, he was not teaching philosophy because we have a mundane purpose. So that's how he started learning how there are philosophical basis, tenets behind the practices. And as an artist, he was already accomplished. He knew how to impress people in a performance. Everyone went ecstatic watching his performance. So he realized that is not the yoga which I present as an artist, nor that is not yoga which I teach to needy people, mundane people, worldly people, because he was student of yoga. And one of the unfortunate scenarios in Guruji's life was he never had students of yoga around him. Nobody was student of yoga. They had ulterior motives. They wanted that to be good for their life. Nobody wanted to understand life. So it was an unfortunate scenario in Guruji's life that he did not get students of yoga. He had to do so much of paid work. Now we are able to relish the cream of it. Now I can be teaching the subject of yoga without catering your needs of life. But Guruji had to do so much of foundational work for yoga to be taught as philosophical system or a system for philosophy of conduct of life. It took such a long time, and all his endeavor in writing so many books on yoga and teaching yoga for so many years and his own practice. And that's why he many times said to the students, you call all this as Iyengar yoga, but there is no Iyengar in your yoga. Why we all practice and practiced and why he practiced falls apart. Why do we do Shirshasana? Why do we do Sarvangasana? What do we get out of it? He was not doing it for getting that. And therefore, he was frantically trying to put across by his so many writings up to Light on Life. And he was, during his talks, he would try to tell us that what is your idea of yoga is not really the yoga. He wanted to put it across. He wanted to put it across, but he could not do that because he had to build up the society or the student clan to really understand that. And now we of our generation, we are able to take the advantage of what he did. all the spade work that he did. And he told us many times, now you can be teaching what you want to teach. Whereas I had to teach what they wanted to learn. Now the time has come that I can be teaching what I want to teach, and I will make you learn what I want to teach. But he said I could not get such caliber students around me, because he had to do all the spade work, all the foundational work, for which he invested whole life of his 96 years. And of course, sparkles of those were coming in his talks, etc. But then people were taking something, oh, here from this here, and oh, high altitude principles of yoga, just hear about them, that's all. But he really could not get to teaching that. And then he said, I should be envying you. He told me and Geeta, I should be envying you for what you are able to do today. I could not be doing it. So basically, understand, his practice was altogether different, because he was a self-made person. And now we are ashamed with the fact that we are really not able to practice with what we practiced. I am not the one who takes pride in saying I am one in Iyengar system. I follow Iyengar system. I am in Iyengar system. It gives me a prick that I am not able to practice what he practiced. We are not practicing what he practiced. We are trying to teach what we learned from him. And all his learnings were out of his practice. So his concept of practice is totally different than what is our concept of practice. We know something how to do, we practice. We and try to improve, try to intensify, that's what we do. That's all. So how to really trace Patanjali's principles in the teachings is not our problem. We don't bother about it. Is it good for my mind? Is it good for my body? I feel fine. Wonderful yoga. So he was trying to trace how Patanjali's principles can come into the practice, what we practice as yoga, and how that practice would be. So his teacher was someone like Patanjali, and the text of Patanjali and the text of various the classical texts. Now, many of us are teachers in yoga. We don't need Patanjali coming as behind us. We just teach yoga that we know, and you just want to practice yoga that is good for you. You don't want to bring in Patanjali in any way. No Patanjali, no problem. No Swatmaram, no problem. No Gherendra, no problem. No Yajnavalkya, no problem. So Guruji was trying to understand how we can be relating our practice to what the tradition spoke about it. And we are only looking for benefit in our life. If it's giving benefit, we will do it. And it is later parts of the teaching, he started showing in what way Patanjali comes. Today we want only Patanjali to start our class and chant the prayers, and then we resign from Patanjali. We do what is good for our body, what is good for our mind. At the end of the class, feel fine and walk out, walk away. Appear for the next class again. And it goes on and on and on and on. We are where we are. So he had the guru force, guru principle working from within and guiding. Now today we shout at you with such an amplitude that you don't have chance to listen to sound within you. Because we will be shouting from top of our voice and telling you everything about what you should do. But he was auditor of the inner sound, and that was his basis of yoga. And that's how many times I said, even you saw. Now that was not the practice film as we all believe it as the title is. His practice in 1975. He never practiced that way, going from pose to pose, pose to pose, pose to pose, no discovery, no exploration, no experimentation. Was there any experimentation in what he did? He just performed. So he showed the control over his body and how the body was yielding and how the body was wieldy to him. And all of us know our bodies are unwieldy. Our mind is unwieldy. Body doesn't yield, mind doesn't yield, and we struggle in our yoga. So that was not the way he practiced. He did not practice the way he has shown here. I am explained in the classes. These are for camera lens. These are for you to understand the posture in its good symmetry, etc., geometry, etc., etc. But when he was practicing, he was not practicing for this precision of physical positioning. He was practicing for the internal systems to work within. You all say these are our body posture. You never bother about how the breathing might be in a posture or how the breathing would be after the posture. How the mind would be in a posture and how the mind would be after the posture. We just look at the body configuration and we try to emulate the body position. You saw him doing Bakasan, Kukudasan, Parshakukudasan, Kaundinyasana, Ekpat Kaundinyasana, Galavasan. These never strike to you how you must be breathing to be doing Kukudasan, Parshakukudasan, Galavasan, Kaundinyasana, Ekpat Kaundinyasana, Ekpat Bakasan. You did not bother about. The yoga happens by what internally happens and not what happens for camera lens or what happens for your eyes. So he understood that a lot of insight is required and his practices were insightful. Basically, his practices were without an external guide, external teacher. Otherwise, most of you have this complaint. If there is a teacher around, we do wonderfully well. If the teacher is not around, we do ridiculous. If we come to institute, we do well. Back home, we do worse. So we depend upon external, extraneous forces. Whereas he all the time depended on that intrinsic force, inherent force in him. So he was looking within. You were looking at him. But when he practiced his asanas in practice session, not for display, not for photograph, not for videograph, he was looking inwards. So as we all dubbed, that was 1975 practice. Hope it is palatable for you. It was not his practice of 1975. It was a display of 1975 for you and me, for our sights. So his practice was his teaching himself. He was taught by himself. That's why later we postulate that yoga is a heuristic subject. What is it? You yourself are your teacher. You yourself is your student. If that is the case, it is called heuristic subject. We learn from someone and we teach someone. We learn from someone, we teach someone. We don't learn from ourselves, we don't teach ourselves. Whereas his practice was completely of that tone that he taught himself and he learned from himself. There was no one for him to ask, am I doing right Shirshasana? Whereas you do Shirshasana, you ask 10 people, am I right? Am I right? You ask your teacher, am I right? Am I right? Somebody has to testify, yes, you are right or you are not right. Because we are not students of ourselves and we don't teach ourselves. Now understand what must be the basis of his practice, where he was teaching himself while he was performing or doing, and he was learning from himself when he was performing or doing. We cannot really imagine what was his practice like. And therefore, he never said that I practice yoga. It is only in English he had to say, I practice yoga. Otherwise, in vernacular, he every day said, I do yoga abhyas. And we all do only practice. We have not taken the lesson from him. He would always say in Kannada, in Hindi, in Marathi, I do yoga abhyas. But there is no word for that in English. And therefore, he had to give that expression, I practice. I practice 3 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours. It was not his practice. Basically, it is explorative, discoverative, experimental. Practice implies repeating. Day after day, you go on repeating and I am practicing. When do you have to practice your asana? When you are learning a new asana, you have learned a new asana, practice it for some days. But once you get that asana, suppose you are doing asana today, first time, you have to practice it day after day after day. So you need a practice. Otherwise, you will not get it. But once you get, then what next? You get Purushangasana, what next? You say, I keep on practicing. I was doing 1 minute, now I can say 5 minutes. I was doing not so good figuration, now I do good, very good configuration. We don't learn in what we do. We don't get taught by what we do. But he got taught in what he did, and he learned in what he did. Now, there is no word for that in English. So, although I am here to talk to you about his practices, I can only sum up by saying what he did was not practice. He practiced only when a new action came, he practiced for some days. When that became his nature, he did not practice it. Nobody should ask him question, why do you still have to stand on your head 96 years of age? It was not his addiction. Otherwise, most of us do not want to miss practice because it is our addiction. If we don't do on a day, we don't feel fine. All of you have experienced this. Suppose you are not able to practice for 3, 4, 5 days. What do you feel? Oh, you feel uneasy. I must practice. I must practice. What is it? Addiction. We are restless, helpless, hapless if we don't do our yoga on a day. We miss it, and next day we want to do it, or after 3, 4 days we want to definitely do it. We don't want to miss too long. So it is like addicted people. You keep them away from their habits. It was not his habituation to practice yoga for 80 years. It was not his addiction to practice yoga. He was ever explorative, ever fresh, ever discoverative. So his practice was as a student of yoga. None of us are student of yoga, yet we practice yoga. Is there anyone who can claim, I am a student of yoga? No, but I practice yoga. This is our faith. So if you get something, you want to practice. If you are not getting something, you want to practice and get it. But once you get it, then what? Keep on practicing, keep on practicing. For what sake? It should not slip away. Otherwise, if you slip away, why are we practicing? So that's the concept of practice. Why do you practice something? That was not the case in him. So ultimately, finally, I say, I am not here to talk about his practice because he never practiced. He lived yoga. He was explorator in yoga, discoverer in yoga, experimenter in yoga, and not practice. Hope the material is reaching where it should reach in you. With that, we'll end the session. Namaskar, all of you. So, thanks for your patience, tolerance, because to put up with what I speak is not easy. Okay, namaskar.
Thank you, sir, for taking us through the journey of Guruji's Yoga Abhyas from a state of flow, from a problem to a no problem state, and just that as a practice got him in a no problem state and solving problems and making it no problems for the others. And then the exploration. And then finally, sir, striking a chord within us that the teacher is within, who is often covered with veils and veils and so deeply hidden. So thank you, sir, for uncovering that. I hope that the effect remains longer and not just momentarily. I would also take this time to think of our dear Geeta ji. It will be her fourth Punyatithi 2 days later. A great yogini, I would say, who had often said that I have prayed to God to keep me here till Guruji's centenary. And none of us really believed the way she was going in the last 6 months that she could actually do what she wanted to have said, and left us 2 days after Guruji's centenary. So we also think of her today. Today, I would like to request Prashantji to release the next issue of Yoga Rahasya. After 27 years and 105 issues, the pandemic brought it to a standstill. We are happy to revive it, and we had an issue released just after Patanjali Jayanti, and this is the next issue. So we'll have a formal release at the hands of Prashantji. So with this, we end the program today. A couple of announcements. There is Prasad waiting for us downstairs. 2, the copies of Yoga Rahasya, this and the previous issues are also available downstairs. You can purchase your copies. 3, please clear the halls and put back all the mats because classes are on tomorrow. So don't forget, the morning 7 a.m. class is on tomorrow. So with this, we can disperse. after paying our respects to Guruji. Thank you so much.
नहीं चालेल चलने देते थोड़ा दिख रहा है लोगों को